I don't know your house.
No, my dad will kill you.
I thought you said your dad really liked me.
Yeah, well, not anymore.
Hello, Peter.
Do I know you?
We started getting some visitors from every universe.
This is all my fault. I promise I'll fix this.
We're gonna get through this. And we're gonna get through it together.
Welcome back, everyone. This is my new Spider-Man No Way Home video for the Sinister Six changes. There's a bunch of big costume upgrades and a bunch of new scenes to break down. So if you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. We're doing a giveaway for IMAX tickets for the movie. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and just leave your favorite moment from the trailers in the comments. I believe they're also dropping a new trailer on Monday when they start releasing tickets officially to everyone. So whenever they do release that, of course, I'll do a new video for it. But I'll just talk about the new footage here, then I'll talk about the Sinister Six changes, the big costume upgrades, and what's actually going on with their plan in the movie. Because obviously they don't want to go back to being dead if Doctor Strange sends them back to their original universes. And it all has something to do with what's happening here with the tears in reality around the Statue of Liberty with his giant Captain America shield in Doctor Strange's special magic box that Spider-Man is trying to trap them in. But there's this brand new scene where Spider-Man and MJ are actually talking about her father. And the funny thing is, we've never actually met him in the Spider-Man movies, the MCU Spider-Man movies. I believe there was some deleted scenes, either it was in Spider-Man Far From Home or maybe it was Spider-Man Homecoming, where they were going to get a little more into her home life and just show you how she was basically living on the poverty line. They were kind of doing a version of the Mary Jane origin story. If you remember the Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst Mary Jane. The difference with Zendaya's version of the character, though, is that her name is Michelle Jones, and that's what MJ stands for, but they're clearly riffing on Mary Jane from the comics and the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. It's just that they rebooted the Spider-Man franchise and redid the origin story so many times that when they rebooted with Tom Holland in the MCU, they didn't want to just go back to doing the exact same characters in the exact same way, but they still wanted to do versions of all those classic comic book characters. So that's why a lot of the Tom Holland MCU Spider-Man characters and his friends are all remixes of versions of the characters that you've seen from the comics and the other movies. Probably the biggest differences with this version of the MJ character is that she's really studious, like she's super smart, very counterculture, mistrustful of authority, the government. Like she was the one who suggested to Peter and Ned Leeds that they prep their gear for their Europe trip in Spider-Man Far From Home so that the government couldn't track them using their phones.
By the way, travel tip, you should probably download a VPN on your phone just so that the government can't track you while we're abroad.
And that was before she found out that Peter was Spider-Man. You also learned that she's really observant in a way that they didn't really get into with the Kirsten Dunst Mary Jane. Like she had suspected something was going on with Peter and they kind of teased that out through all the different Spider-Man movies to Spider-Man Far From Home. The big joke being that she didn't actually fully put two and two together, like she hadn't connected all the dots. And she was like, wait, what? I was just bluffing. I knew that something was going on, but I didn't know that you were Spider-Man. So the dynamics between them are fairly similar, but so much about her character just feels very different. There's a whole different vibe about her. But one of the biggest Easter eggs that you spotted in here is the classic Gwen Stacy death scene with her falling from the Statue of Liberty, which is something that happened with Spider-Man before he actually got into a relationship with Mary Jane. If you haven't read a lot of the classic Spider-Man comics, Gwen Stacy came before Mary Jane. She was killed when she was thrown off a building. Spider-Man wasn't able to save her. It wasn't until later that he started going out with Mary Jane and they became a couple. They kind of did a version of that with the Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man movies. Like they started with Gwen Stacy when he was in high school, then followed them, did the big death scene, and had they continued with Amazing Spider-Man 3, they would have eventually set up with the Mary Jane story arc. There was even a version of Mary Jane played by Shailene Woodley that they filmed scenes for in Amazing Spider-Man 2, but I guess they just decided to delete them because it was just too much. They were piling too many characters into the movie already. But I think we can all assume that they're not going to kill off MJ. Like this whole scene here with the Gwen Stacy death scene is a big misdirect. Early theory is that Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man is going to wind up saving her and kind of redeeming himself for not being able to save his Gwen Stacy. And if it wasn't clear, they are going to bring back the Tom Holland MCU Spider-Man in new Spider-Man movies, like a new trilogy that'll be a completely different storyline. And I think part of the idea is that they would also bring back Zendaya's MJ character as part of that arc too. It's a bit more of a question as to what's going on with all the side characters, these supporting characters. There is supposed to be a subplot in the movie about Peter trying to get accepted to MIT because he's already a science whiz, but Iron Man went to MIT, and since he's like his surrogate father in the MCU, Papa Bless, he's also trying to get into the same school. The funny thing, though, is that because Iron Man is like a super genius in the MCU, by the time Peter had become Spider-Man, Iron Man was getting ready to graduate from MIT. Like, he was a teenager when he graduated from MIT. But regardless of what happens with that plot, with the MIT subplot of him trying to get into college during the film, he will eventually go to college in that next Spider-Man trilogy. It just might not wind up being MIT. Side note too, if you guys have seen any of my Black Panther 2 videos, I did a first look video because they released some footage of them filming at MIT. I believe it was Shuri and Okoye coming to MIT to peep on Riri Williams because of the whole armor suit subplot from the comics with her character. So Spider-Man may or may not wind up going to college with Riri Williams at MIT in the MCU. As for all the big Sinister Six changes and their storyline during the movie, if you've seen the new poster, you can actually get a much better look at what their upgraded MCU costumes look like. I call them upgrades, but really it's just different versions of the costumes that are made to be more comic book accurate. Starting with Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin. Like I said a couple weeks ago, I did a big first look for his costume that we got behind the scenes of. He's got this battle-damaged and repaired version of his Green Goblin suit from that first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie, and his glider. They made it look a little bit shinier at first before it gets damaged, but it's meant to be the exact same suit. It looks like he's wearing the helmet at the beginning of his arc in the movie, like during this big bridge fight scene with the pumpkin bombs. But then later, during this night scene, of what seems like the big final boss fight at the Statue of Liberty, he's on his glider, he's not wearing the mask, he's just wearing goggles, chucking a bunch of pumpkin bombs, and he's wearing a very comic book accurate strap and pouch to hold all his gear. And it's the same situation with Electro, like they're slowly making him more comic book accurate with all these MCU costume changes. He's wearing a harness here that's hooked up to an Iron Man arc reactor. If you can't see the symbol, it's the arc reactor from the end of Iron Man 2 in the first Avengers movie that he built using that new Infinity Stone element. Electro is using the arc reactor to keep himself at full charge during all of his fights, because when he uses his powers, he loses charge, he gets weaker and weaker and weaker, so an arc reactor would solve that problem. Notice the electricity halo around his head? It's forming that star shape from the comics from his classic costume. The harness itself also kind of resembles the lines of the classic costume too. Sandman is probably one of the few characters that hasn't really changed though with this MCU glow-up, because they already had a pretty comic book accurate version in Spider-Man 3. It's pretty easy to do him comic book accurate. But it does look like they tuned the Lizard up quite a bit with modern special effects. Now his basic transformation, like the science behind it, hasn't changed. It's the same version of the Lizard. He just looks way better because they're using better graphics. The big theory right now is that the Sinister Six characters who actually do team up in the movie, Green Goblin, Electro, Sandman, and Lizard, like during this big Statue of Liberty fight scene, it seems like Green Goblin is the one leading the team, like he's meant to be the actual main villain, and he's the one who comes up with their plan to manipulate Doctor Strange's box or his spell or use some technology that they rig up to stop him from sending them back to their original universes, like stopping Doctor Strange from fixing the tears in reality and undoing the spell. Because if they get sent back, they'll just go back to being dead, and none of them want that. And that's probably why Doctor Strange is telling Spider-Man in this scene here that you have to capture them before they break all of reality. Like what the Green Goblin and the Sinister Six are doing threatens to destroy all of reality. Like what they do will only make things worse until the fabric of all reality tears so badly the multiverse just collapses on itself. Which might sound familiar because that sounds a lot like what He Who Remains version of Kang was talking about during the Loki series with the Kang Multiverse War.
Each variant fighting to preserve their universe and annihilate the others. This is almost the end of everything and everyone.
The difference is that all the Kang variants were just erasing, going around destroying other realities one at a time, trying to make their own timelines the dominant one. But it was still a mutually assured destruction situation where the war threatened to destroy every universe, every timeline. So different methods, but same result. Goodbye all of reality. I'm not sure if there are going to be any big Kang Easter eggs during Spider-Man No Way Home, because we're not really supposed to see the actual version of Kang the Conqueror, like the real main villain, till Ant-Man 3, Quantumania, or Loki Season 2, depending on which of those drops first. But I think we can already assume that Doctor Strange and Spider-Man are at least partially successful because the MCU has to survive long enough through the end of the movie into the beginning of Doctor Strange 2, Multiverse of Madness. But early theory, they'll probably just end things without completely fixing everything. Like the fabric of reality will still be very weak, as if Doctor Strange were to fix these tears with a bunch of magical duct tape. Like, don't push too hard on this or blow too hard because they'll break again. Suddenly off in the distance, you can see Scarlet Witch saying, "Hold my Darkhold," as she just rips through to other universes again. Gotta find my kids. But post all your theories in the comments below. What do you think Green Goblin and these other Sinister Six characters' actual plan is that threatens all of reality? Like I said, there's supposed to be some special new preview, some new footage that'll drop on Monday when they actually put tickets on sale, and I'll just keep doing my IMAX ticket giveaway in all my Spider-Man videos. Sony just released a brand new Venom Let There Be Carnage deleted scene all about Null, God of the Symbiotes. You can click here for my video about that, and you can click here for my full Hawkeye Episode 1 and Episode 2 video. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.